Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sunrise Yearbook podcast. This podcast is here to talk about what it means for technology impacting the way we teach, learn, and our physical and our psychological behavior. Today, I am joined by Mr. Roby, the psychological teacher here at La Sierra High School in Riverside, California. Greetings, Mr. Roby.
Hi, Abraham. Nice to be with you today.
Could you explain to me and the audience, Mr. Roby, about who you are and your role in psychology?
Sure. I'm a teacher here at La Sierra High School, and I've been working here at La Sierra since 1997. So I've been at the school a long time, seen a lot of changes through the years, and I'm currently teaching AP Psychology, U.S. History, regular psychology, and sociology.
And can you explain to us about what psychology is as in general?
Sure. Psychology for high school is an elective class that's usually open to juniors and seniors. It's a college prep elective that does satisfy your A through G requirements for admission to a four-year university. So it's a good elective to take if you have room in your schedule. Psychology itself is structured as a one-semester class. The students usually take psychology first semester and switch into sociology for the second semester. So I'll have the same group of students for both classes throughout the year. And it's always very interesting and fun to see their reactions to both classes and which classes they might prefer or which class they feel applies to them more. Psychology itself is the study of human behavior, focusing a lot on individual behavior, whereas sociology is more human behavior focusing on the group and group dynamics and group interaction. Psychology focuses on you as an individual and your behavior and where your behavior comes from.
Okay, so on the topic of psychology, you said you've been teaching at La Sierra since 1997, correct?
Yes.
When were you, and if I may ask, when did you graduate high school?
I graduated actually from La Sierra in 1988, but that's a big secret, so no one's supposed to know.
So since you graduated since you've been an adult since 1988, you've seen a lot. Do you think you've seen a lot of advancement and change in technology in itself, and how that has affected people since then?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of positive changes with technology since my time as a student, and I also feel like some of those changes have not necessarily been positive changes, but nevertheless, here we are. So it's kind of a mixed bag, so to speak. You have a lot of good progress that's been made with technology and the convenience of technology and the help that it provides, but we've also seen, I think, some negative aspects of our dependency on technology.
Going back to your time in high school and as adult during the 80s and 90s, could you give us a glimpse on how technology from then and how society from then was, and how technology and how it impacted society then was different than how it is now?
I think from my time as a student to now, I feel like when I was a student, we had to be much more resourceful in finding information, using books, going to the library, actually researching, versus let me grab my phone and Google this really quick. So I think that, I don't know if it's correct to say that we had to put more effort into our research, but it was a more involved process rather than let me grab my phone and I'm going to just Google everything I need. So I think although it's convenient to have this amazing thing that we can have in our pocket and carry around, think in some ways it's made us less willing to actually really investigate something and really put time and effort into something that we want to know or something we want to learn.
So you would say that, like, since before, the resourcefulness that you guys had to do back in your time made you guys more investigative then, rather than now, where you could search something up on the internet and have access to a wide range of information.
Yeah, I think you had to be more focused on, okay, how am I going to get this information? So, for example, if I have a project to do in class and I have to write a paper or research a president or some topic, how am I going to do that? I don't have access to my phone. I can't just pull out my Chromebook and look something up. And the issue that I see with a lot of students is they might look the information up, but then they don't really want to kind of go under the surface and, okay, let me read this information. What am I reading? Now let me take this information and now I'm going to write about it. It's like, oh, look, everything I need is right here. So I'm just going to copy and paste it and okay, I'm done. And so I think it's great to have technology, and I Google things all the time. Like, I love Wikipedia. If you don't know something or you don't know who somebody is, it's awesome to look it up and think, oh, that's who that person is, or oh, that's the name of that movie. But when that becomes your only focus and you're always looking for an easy way to do something, it's almost like I feel like maybe today students don't take as much pride into the fact that, I really worked on this assignment. Like, I researched this, I wrote this, versus, oh, I just got this on Google and I copied and pasted it.
So, you would say that, like, it makes people less proud of themselves now rather than before, where you actually had to, like, do a lot of research and a lot of work in order to find the answer to something?
I think just that sense of accomplishment. Like, this was a hard assignment, but I did it. Versus, oh, we were supposed to research this topic. I found something. It's good enough. Because there's so much information out there that it's easy to find any information that you need. And then I think another issue is, just because I can Google something doesn't necessarily mean that it's good information.
Could you show us, like, if there is, like, any kind of way you can show us on either the sociology or the psychology of sense of accomplishment and how that affects humans? And could you say on, like, how that is how is that affecting people now positively and negatively?
That's a really good question. In psychology, there's a concept called intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. And intrinsic motivation is when you do something for your own sense of accomplishment, like your own sense of pride. Like, I did this because I wanted to do this. I'm proud of what I did. I did this by myself, and I met my goal. And your reward is your sense of accomplishment, like your pride in your own work. Versus extrinsic motivation is, I'm only going to do something because I want something. Like, I'll do this, but what are you going to give me? So I'll do this, but what's in it for me? What reward am I getting? And so you always want to try to focus on, when you're doing something, being intrinsically motivated. Like, you're doing it for yourself, for your sense of knowledge, your sense of, I accomplished this, I learned this, I taught myself this, versus, oh, we have to do this? Well, how many points is it worth? Or what do I get for doing this? And that's extrinsic motivation, which I think our dependency on technology has made a lot more common.
Okay, so so you said it's made a lot more common, and you've said also that we've become more dependent on technology. What do you think that, how do you think on yourself, like, first of all, let's focus more on yourself, since you Since you are a more wiser person on the use of technology and its impact than most other people, what do you say? Like, how do you say like technology can impact the individual person, like sociologically or psychologically?
I'm going to quote one of our former principals, Miss Miliacho, and she was talking to the class or to the school one time, to the teachers, about the use of technology in the classroom and how things have really changed, especially since COVID, with everybody being online, everybody having access to a Chromebook. And one of the points she made, I never forgot, she said, the more connected we are, the more separate we are. And so the idea that, yeah, we all have a phone. We can all pull it out right now. We all have the Chromebook. We can all message each other at any moment. But being connected through technology is not the same as being connected person to person and forming that real relationship with a friend and with someone that's a classmate. And I see it, unfortunately, a lot in class. In the old days, a class would come in and everybody would sit down, everybody would be talking, and the bell would ring, and you would have to tell the class, okay, guys, the bell rang, stop talking, it's time to start, blah, blah, blah. And now you don't have to tell anybody to stop talking. You have to tell people to put their phone away, because you can have 35 people in here and the room will be totally silent. And that's because they're all on their phone. And I had an experience the other day where it was before school, my door was open. Students were coming in for first period a little bit at a time. And as they would come in, I would, look up and say hi to them. But then I noticed the more people that were coming in, the classroom was really quiet. And by this time I had probably 10, 12 students that were in class. And I looked over my shoulder. Every single student was on their phone. And nobody was talking to each other. And as somebody who teaches sociology, who really tries to emphasize the importance of community and being connected with each other and forming relationships, that's, to me, is really sad, because you're not taking the opportunity to reach out to somebody that's right next to you that might be your new best friend, but you don't know that because you're preoccupied with watching a video or playing a game or texting somebody on your phone who's not even here. So that makes me sad, is that I feel like we're missing out on opportunities to form really good new relationships with new people because we're rather would stare at a screen.
Wow, that's very like haunting to know, like how that thing, how technology in itself, on the purpose of for it being something good for us, has inadvertently turned around us. You know what I mean?
I did a study in psychology at the end of the semester where I had all the students put their phone up in the front of the classroom for just the class period. And it was really interesting. I asked them, I said, okay, you're just going to put your phone up here on the table and you're not in trouble or anything. I just want you to lay your phone on the table. And so many of the students didn't even want to give me their phone. And one of the guys, he looked at me and he looked so sad and he said, but I'm not in trouble. And I thought that was really sad that he associated his phone being taken away with him being in trouble. So it's almost like we think of a phone as a reward. And I said, oh, I know you're not in trouble. I just want to do an experiment with your phones. So I took everybody's phone, we laid them on the table, and we had our lesson. We did what we were doing in class. And then about the last 10 minutes, I said, okay, go get your phone, and I want everybody to add up your number of notifications. And it was amazing. I had one student that in about a 40-minute time period had almost 200 notifications.
200 notifications.
And so if you think about that, if you're constantly getting these notifications for Snapchat, for Instagram, email, texting, whatever it might be, your focus is going towards your phone, not towards where you are right now in this moment. And it's natural to hear that little noise or feel your phone vibrate and say, oh, let me just check it really quick. And we don't even know that we're checking it. And I did a little research. The average person sends 110 texts a day and has the habit of checking their phone at least once every 5 to 6 minutes. So if we're constantly looking for that reward, like if we're going to relate it to psychology, like our phone is our reward. And so when we get that like, when we get that notification, when somebody commented on our post, that's making that addiction even stronger. Because when we post something, we're like, ooh, I hope people like it. Or I'm going to check how many people liked it. Or who liked it. Or, hey, how come so-and-so didn't like it yet? Instead of just saying, hey, I want to post this because this was a good picture and I like it. You know, we're not doing it necessarily for our own benefit. We're doing it so other people will notice us.
Do you think that in any kind of way creates any sort of it would not be right to say that this produces some kind of narcissism, but what do you think about that? Does it? Like if you're posting something or if you're doing stuff purely to get likes and to be famous, do you think that might be narcissistic, or do you think not so much?
Oh, I think so, because if you're narcissistic, you believe the world revolves around you and you're the center of the universe. And so if you're posting something and you're thinking, okay, oh, look, I got this many likes or this many people follow me. But those aren't real people. Those aren't people that you know. And so if you have somebody and they say, oh, I have, 1,000 people follow me. Part of me wants to say, well, who cares? They're not people that you know. They're not people that would be there to help you if you had a problem. They're not your friend that you could call if you needed something. So that's not real life. And when people are looking for validation by how many people follow them or how many likes they get, that's not really healthy. And, the issue is phones aren't going to go away. Like that technology that we have, we can't put it back in the box. It's not going to disappear. It's always going to be part of our lives now. But we need to learn how to live with it and know that we're in control of the technology. The technology is not in control of us.
And since so that is very informational for like you to like come and tell us about that, considering that it seems like now since the world is changing so fast, especially in the 40 years that from your time as like an adult, or like even
that sounds so long.
or even my father's or my mother's time, they graduated high school in the 2000s, and they remember it being so much different than even in the 2000s 20 years ago. Now I cannot imagine like how much different it would have been even longer than that. What do you let me continue. There are many things that people have said on the benefits and the consequences of that. For me, by quoting a freshman whose name is August Burnham, he says, quote, "I love the fact that there's technology I can use to listen to music, to do assignments online, and I especially love that I can play games online or check up on my friends without having to in person. It also helps me not having to go out to see friends often, since I find it a little scary to go out while I'm worrying about how I look and what I'm doing, etc." And then in an interview last week with Mr. Sage, he talked about how it could harm us, how it could help us, and since he is the technology administrator, he had some insightful. He had some thinking some insightful thinking from his position on what he thought, as he said, quote, about dangers that most educators talk as. Actually, you know what? We should, before we talk about Mr. Sage, I want to hear your thoughts from August's quote on the use of technology?
I don't want to give the impression that I think technology is all bad, because I do think it definitely has some benefits. And if you think about when we were learning from home during COVID, I mean, the technology was great. We couldn't have done it without the benefit of technology. And just the idea that, I could be at home and open my laptop and see, here's everybody in their little square. I mean, it was amazing. And what would we have done if we hadn't had that opportunity? And that being said, of course, some students took advantage of the situation and didn't turn on their cameras and took a nap during class, and but that's going to be in any situation. But I was really thankful for technology during that COVID time, because it made it possible that we could still have class. And I feel like the students that really wanted to could have the benefit of it. They still were able to learn and get something out of our classes. And if we hadn't had that technology, I mean, what would we have done? We would have had to just, leave copies in the office for worksheets or something. I mean, it would have been really difficult. So definitely think that technology can be useful and can be a really positive thing. And you look at students that do online learning for colleges or distance learning, connecting with people that are far away, the fact that we can send texts back and forth, and, we can, do FaceTime with people across the country. I mean, it's amazing. And I have a little nephew that's 4 years old. He'll FaceTime me all the time, and he lives far away, so I don't get to see him very often, but we see each other all the time through our phone. And so I don't feel like, it's been so many months since I've seen him, because we talk to each other and see each other, through FaceTime. And when I was little, we couldn't even call my grandma that lived far away because it was a long distance phone call and it was expensive. So that's all great things that we've done. But I think that when it becomes a distraction, or it becomes more of a problem or a negative rather than a positive, then that's where we have to be concerned. And it's like I said, we control the technology. We shouldn't let the technology control us. It's okay to close that Chromebook. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm going to put my phone on silent for a while.
As when it comes to technology, whether people talk about its benefits or its negatives, there are two things now that actually come up to mind, which probably might influence the future, or at least one of them. It is the rise of artificial intelligence and its accessibility, and the effects that the COVID pandemic 4 years ago had. So can you talk to us what you have heard about news relating to psychology that COVID had impacted us and impacted students during lockdown?
Yes. I was doing a little research earlier, and since the COVID time in the last 4 years or so, there's actually been about a 35 to 40% increase in mental health issues because of people's connection or dependency on technology. Mm-hmm. And so, although, like I said, it can be a benefit, it also can lead to stress and can lead to issues like I've texted them, they left me on read, it's been 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes since they responded to me, and it leads to other mental and physical issues that don't necessarily need to happen. And so we are seeing an increase in mental health issues and problems since the last few years since COVID. If you move around, the lights will come back up.
As for as for AI, according to what Mr. Sage had Mr. Sage during this time during our interview during my interview with Mr. Sage, we did talk about the use and the progress of AI, and he did say that AI, whether it would for its good and its bad, will be a revolutionary concept. He has said both positives on how we could use it to help us like create and do things, but he's also talked about how this might make it bad, that how this might make students like how it makes an easier way out now rather than before. As quoting from him, the danger of AI is that it will become something that we use so that we do not have to think anymore. I think the danger would be, instead of using it as a tool, it is doing the work for me. What do you think about AI, and what do you think will have as an impact both in teaching, both in probably student work, from your knowledge, and how that actually might also affect us even more now?
I agree with what Mr. Sage said, that one of the issues with AI is I believe that it's going to interfere with our ability to develop critical thinking skills. So say, for example, I give my students an assignment to come up with 3 discussion questions on some topic. And rather than put some actual thought into, okay, what are some good questions, they might just go to AI. I need 3 discussion questions on this topic. And then in 2 seconds, there's the questions. They're probably good questions. It's not that the questions are bad, but they didn't come up with those questions, you see? And so to me, I think as a teacher and being in education, one of the things you want to do with your students is not just teach them the subject, but you want to teach them critical thinking skills and problem solving. And when you're so dependent on AI to give you the easy solution or solve your problem or write your paper as quickly as possible, then you're not really developing those skills that are separate from the actual subject. Those are skills that you can use in real life.
Mm-hmm. As for like thinking, like critical thinking, and for creating basically like your own independent mindset, do you think thanks to AI and thanks to advancements in technology now and in the future, do you think psychologically we might lose that, or do you think that it will, or do you think that kind of thing will still persist in humans and students?
I think it depends on the person. I think that it's easy to say, oh, the future is bleak and we're all doomed. But I also know that realistically, there's a lot of good students out there. There's a lot of good, hardworking people and critical thinkers that are going to grow up to be problem solvers and be willing to put in the time and effort into, meeting whatever issue might come up.
And as for finally, what do you think, what do you think personally, how technology has impacted you psychologically, and what do you think might be like the future for this is not finally, but what do you think like technology has like impacted you like in any kind of way, psychologically, like work-wise, or in any kind of situation?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I think that it has, since COVID, changed the way, in some ways, that I teach my class, because we do have more access to visual things, things that we can find online to share. I'm a visual learner. So, like, for example, today in my history class, we're talking about the Kennedy assassination. So it was very easy for me to bring up a video of that and say, okay, here's what we're talking about, or something along those lines, where in the past I could talk about it, but if I wanted to show a video of it, I had to have a DVD, I had to have an old VHS that I had recorded off TV, some other access to a visual. And so I think for someone who's a visual learner and likes to teach using lots of visual things, like I love that aspect of technology, and having the big screen and having our laptops in class, I think are great. My concern is when all the students come in and it doesn't matter what we're doing in class, they all immediately reach for their Chromebook and open it up. And I'm like, you don't need it today. We're not using it today, but they just have it and they're so used to using it. And I had a student actually in my sophomore class that told me he forgot to do my homework because I'm the only teacher that gives him paper homework, and everything else was posted online on Google Classroom. And I post things on Google Classroom too, but I like having a paper copy of the homework, and I like getting that paper copy back so that I can read it, I can hold it in my hand, I can make comments on the paper, rather than just, let me bring it up in the classroom and look on online. To me, it's not the same. But I thought it was interesting that because the assignment wasn't posted on Google Classroom, then he forgot about it. Because for him, it's the norm that it's now everything's online versus here's the old-fashioned handout, So it made me more aware that there are a lot of other teachers that are doing more just online things. And I understand from the student's perspective, if they're using, for example, their Chromebook in every other class, then that's what they know, that's what they're used to. But I also don't think that needs to be the case every single day for every class.
As with that, like the people who have been under the most subject of like technology's impact and how that has affected both student behavior and psychological behavior has been Generation Alpha. They've been under subject for multiple times on media and everywhere else. And there has been some rumors about them, like how they're always, like, for example, like for some people have said that they're always glued on their tablets, or like they're always glued on something like their iPads, that they do not have good behavior or something. However, I want to hear from you what you have heard from Gen Alpha, and what do you see, and whether you see them, and whether you see how they might behave psychologically coming in next year in a good or in a positive or in a negative way.
Okay, that's a good question. In psychology, one of the psychologists that we talk about is a guy named B.F. Skinner, and he did a lot of studies with operant conditioning. And what operant conditioning is it teaches us new behavior by either giving us a reward or giving us a punishment. And so if we do something and we get a reward for it, we're more likely to keep doing it. If we do something and it leads to a punishment, then we don't want to do that anymore. And I see for the students, their constant reward is the use of technology. And that's something that they, for better or for worse, have grown up with, because we've all seen little 2-3-year-old kids with their parents, and they're being fussy, and mom just hands the kid a phone to watch this video so they can be quiet. And if they're being exposed to that from the time they're very small, then they grow up and they don't know anything else. They don't know, like, hey, here's a book I can look at, or let me color this page. It's just like, here's my phone. Watch this video, be quiet. And that, I think, we're reinforcing, maybe behavior or a dependency that we don't want all the time. And, to me, the issue is technology is not going to go away. Our phone use is not going to go away. It's not like we can put it back in the bag and say, okay, it doesn't exist. But I think just learning to live with it in a positive way. And like I said before, us using technology for our benefit and not being tied to the technology in such a way that it's causing us stress and it's causing us harm, because then it's not a benefit to you. And when you have that kind of addiction to your phone or to the technology, you don't at that time realize that, I am using my phone 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day. I would challenge everybody to look at your screen time. And I think people would be amazed at how much screen time they have. I had a girl in class last year when we checked our screen time. She had 20 hours of screen time in the last 24 hours. And I said, how is that possible? Like, we only have 24 hours in a day. And she was like, I don't know. How could she be on her phone for 20 hours out of a 24-hour day? But that's what it was. So that is my concern. It's not that, technology is bad or we shouldn't use technology, but we need to use it in an appropriate way and remember that technology is here to help us, not control us.
We are kind of cutting a little bit short on time right now. It's 4:28, but what do you have any hopes, or do you have any concerns? Like, do you have hope, or do you have concern about where technology is going right now, or do you have hope that we will adapt to technology and learn how to control it psychologically, or do you think that technology might consume us psychologically?
Abraham, that's a hard question. Mm-hmm. I would like to think that we're going to learn to live with it and use it when we want to use it to our advantage. But, and it's a big but, I think there are some people that their social media, their dependency on technology is too powerful and it's overwhelming. And for example, I had a group of students the other day talking, and they were talking about some guy that liked one of the girls, and the girl was saying, he asked for my Insta. And I said, is that what you do now? Like, if you like somebody, you ask to follow them on Instagram. And they all giggled and said, yeah, that's the first way we start talking. And, the sociologist in me says, well, why not just talk to someone? Why do you need to go through their Instagram? And I think a lot of times when people are texting or people are posting things on social media, they will say things that they wouldn't necessarily say in person. So I would just remind people to be like your true self, be honest, try to make those connections with people one-on-one. Don't look for technology to make the connection for you.
Thank you for letting us interview you, Mr. Roby, and it was great pleasure meeting you.
Awesome, thank you, everyone.
As we continue to go into the future, there are hopes and worries for us as humans. We change many things, and our ideas of what may happen in the future and how we prepare for it are and will always be up for debate until the inevitable happens. However, I would say that glimpses of hope, humanity, can never be squashed. From the words of Sean Swarner, you can go a month without food. You can live 3 days without water. You can live 3 days without water, but you can't go more than 60 seconds without hope. This is Abraham Caudillo of the Sunrise Yearbook.